So let's make some distinctions between scientific inquiry, that feeling of aha that we get that's intuition, and what Bert Hellinger describes as phenomenological seeing. First, let's look at science. Well, human beings have to answer a few basic questions. In any situation, we and any other organism, all the way down to an amoeba, we need to decide, do I approach the phenomena that's coming at me or do I avoid it? So is this a high status person that I need to be careful of and they look like they're in a bad mood, like my boss, and I want to avoid them? Or is this a good friend and I want to approach? So we're making that distinction unconsciously all the time, approach, avoid. And in order to do that, we have to answer three questions for ourselves. And the three questions are, what is it? Who is that that's approaching me? It's my boss, okay? What should I do? Do I approach? Do I avoid? Do I engage? If I do that, this is the third question, what will happen next? So we're always trying to unconsciously answer those questions, make those kind of decisions on the fly, in the moment, as we move through life. And so science is one way of answering some of these questions. Intuition is another, and seeing is yet a third way. So in scientific inquiry, we are engaged really deeply with the what is it and how does it work. So scientists will really observe a phenomenon. They will get ideas about it. They'll kind of poke the system a bit. They may try things. They may change things, trying to understand what is this phenomena, whether it's, I'm now a small farmer, so I'm really interested in growing crops. What is this thing that's eating my crop, and what do I do about it? That could be a form of scientific inquiry that we've been carrying on as a species for thousands of years. What can I do about this? So what is it? How does it work? What can I do about it? Those are the questions that we're interested in scientific inquiry. So in scientific inquiry, we have a hypothesis. We might study a phenomenon and say, well, I think that there's a problem between the relationship between a boss and an employee, and something about the structure of the system is creating this tension. Or we might be looking at a family and seeing a set of oscillating triangles between the grandmother, the mom, and the dad, and how the child plays into that and forms another triangle. So we might be getting ideas about what we think is happening. In science, we have to test that idea. So it's called a hypothesis. If we don't test it, it's a hallucination. It's a good story we're telling ourselves about how we think something works, and we're not engaging that idea with the real world to see if that's true. Now, another interesting thing about scientific inquiry is the universe is a vast and complex place, and no theory can ever be proven true unless we can get the whole universe in our hands and show that everything in the universe agrees with this theory. So in science, we try to prove something false. So a hypothesis is set up to prove whether or not in the moment it's working and I can keep exploring that, or, hey, it's not true. So you might have a hypothesis, for instance, that all ravens are black. All these birds are black, and that's what makes a raven. It's black. And unfortunately, that hypothesis, though there is much evidence to support it, is false, because there are a bunch of albino ravens in British Columbia. So they're white. So the idea that if it's a raven, it must be black, that's not true. So we've proved it false. So scientific inquiry is a kind of ongoing process of having an idea and then being sort of suspicious of the idea and testing it. Asking the world, here's my idea, let me try it on, see what happens, I'll get feedback. And it's a kind of iterative process of learning, letting the world teach you by asking questions and getting answers. So it's a deep engagement with the living world, and that is actually why First, scientists have been the ones to point to climate change. They've been the ones to collectively say, look, this is what our inquiry and the results of that are showing us. It's also why scientists are hesitant to say that something is true, because it's true as far as we know now, but it could be proven false. So science is this long, we've been doing this for thousands of years of really trying to understand how things work. Now, intuition is a different process. Intuition is that moment where you relax, you stop trying to figure something out, perhaps, and your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind, your memories of things, the situation at hand, all combine to give you a flash of insight. So it's that unexpected aha moment where suddenly you have a new understanding, a new way to describe the world, a new view of what the situation is that you're faced with, or whatever the issue is that you're focused on. So, for example, there's a famous story in science of a moment of intuition, and often scientists proceed by intuitive understandings of the phenomena they're studying. There's a famous scientist named Kekule who was studying carbons and trying to understand the behavior of aromatic carbons. And as he was taking a nap on the bus one day, he had a little dream, and the dream showed him the molecular structure that he hadn't thought of before. So even in science, we have intuition. We often have intuitive hits on what's going on. The difference is, in science, we go and test it. We ask the world, here's my idea, here's my new understanding. What do you think? Can you show that this is at least true for the moment, or is it false? So there's a feedback loop that's built into scientific inquiry that is actually quite helpful and corrective over time. Intuition is really also very useful. When you're in the middle of a process with a client, or you're in the middle of a situation in your own life, that moment of like, oh, I can see things differently. My memory of how things work, my gestalt feeling of what's going on right now, and my way of telling myself stories and making, meaning out of things, all combine in that moment of like, oh, that's it. So that's really helpful. It can help move us along. It can take us to new levels of understanding. It can give us new insights and new ways of thinking and being in the world. And it can sometimes lead us astray. So that's where the testing can be helpful. Now, Bert Hellinger was talking about something that was different from both of those. He was a student of phenomenology, and in his work with clients, he arrived at a different approach to inquiry. And it's really much more of a phenomenological approach. So he called it seeing. And in this way of inquiring, it's very different in certain particulars. First of all, unlike the other two situations where you might have a focus or you might have a goal, in seeing, we don't have a goal. We're just being with. And not only that, you're being with an other, and you are in service to them. So you're in service to your client, you're in service to their system, and you're not carrying your own agenda. You're just there. You're present with them. And you have taken everything you think you know, and you've sort of bundled it into brackets and set it aside. So it's like the field is clean and open and inviting the other to show up in their mystery and fullness. And part of that is really being open, allowing yourself to feel and be impacted by the other, to sense and experience whatever shows up. And in doing so, we actually are perceiving the whole, not necessarily the parts. We get a kind of overall reading of something. In this way, we might understand something about a client's history that they may not have even told us. But it's there, it's present. And we've allowed ourselves to see it. So these are three very different forms of inquiry. When you see someone in this way, you experience connection with them and they with you. They feel your presence. They feel the open space that you've left for them to show up as they are. And it invites a different kind of connection with a client. And it's sometimes a really useful way just to be in life. So each of these three ways of being engaged with an other are very useful in their own way. Science can help us make models, understand how things work, test them, see what they can do for us. Intuition can give us new insights and new pictures on the world that we might not have seen before, new ways of making sense. And seeing puts us in connection with, in relationship to, an other in ways that help us perceive their system as a whole. So I hope you found this video useful, and I hope you'll experiment with these three ways of inquiry and perceiving. And until next time, I wish you well.